Welcome to my Father's Day outcome for you, as I am an alienated father by J. Claude McDaniel. Please share this message with others that are abused by being alienated from their loved ones on this your special day.
For many years, Father's Day became a difficult day for me. Like many parents who have experienced parental alienation, I learned to approach the holiday with lowered expectations. What was once a day of family gatherings, phone calls, cards, and shared memories slowly became a reminder of distance and silence. After my divorce more than 2 decades ago, and over time becoming alienated from 2 of my 3 adult children, Father's Day became something I often preferred to avoid altogether. Invitations from friends were politely declined. Family celebrations were often skipped. It simply seemed easier than facing the emotions that inevitably surfaced. When I retired and moved to this southern retirement community about 10 years ago, I was looking for little more than peace, quiet, and a fresh start. Soon after arriving, I met the family living next door. The household consisted of a hard-working mother, her father, an older son, and 2 younger children, a boy and a girl who were still in their preteen years when our paths first crossed. At the time, they were simply the kids next door. I never imagined that a decade later they would become such an important part of my life. Over the years, their grandfather passed away, the children grew into young adults, and life continued to move forward as it always does. What began as simple neighborly interactions slowly evolved into something much deeper. There was never a defining moment. No formal agreement. No announcement. Just years of shared experiences. A question about how something worked. A bicycle repair that eventually became automobile repairs. A request for help around the house. A ride somewhere. Advice during difficult times. Or simply someone willing to listen. As the young children grew older, I taught them both how to drive. We spent hours working on vehicles, tackling home repairs, and discussing the responsibilities that come with adulthood. The young woman often stopped by to talk. Sometimes life doesn't require answers as much as it requires someone willing to listen without judgment. Whenever I could, I tried to be that person. I never attempted to replace anyone in their lives. Their relationship with their father is their story and not mine to tell. I simply tried to be present. To offer guidance when asked, to teach what I knew, to help when I could. And over time, what started as neighboring became mentoring, friendship, and mutual respect. As the years passed, I watched them grow from children into responsible young adults. And although I cared deeply about both of them, I never expected what happened this Father's Day. The day before this Father's Day, the young woman casually told me to keep the day open. She wouldn't explain why. She simply smiled and said I should make no plans. To be honest, Father's Day had become a day I usually tried to get through rather than celebrate. I certainly wasn't expecting what would happen next. What happened reminded me of something I had almost forgotten. Sometimes the impact we have on others isn't measured by biology alone. Sometimes it is measured by time, by consistency, by showing up, by teaching, listening, encouraging, and caring when no recognition is expected. And sometimes, when you least expect it, life finds a way to remind you that those efforts mattered more than you ever realized. What followed became one of the most memorable Father's Days of my life. The day began with a trip to a small South Carolina town that had long been on my bucket list. At this stage of life, now in my early 70s, there are still a few places I have always wanted to visit. This particular town seemed almost frozen in time. I had first learned about it through a television program not long ago. It was portrayed as a place where neighbors knew one another by name, children rode bicycles through quiet streets, and people gathered on large, covered porches to talk while sipping sweet, iced tea. As we arrived, I quickly realized that the television portrayal wasn't far from reality. The streets were quiet and unpaved in places. Most of the homes appeared to date back to the 19th century. There were no chain stores dominating the landscape, no heavy traffic, and no sense of hurry. The nearest supermarket was said to be nearly an hour away. It felt like stepping back into a simpler America, the kind of place many people believe no longer exists. I found myself taking in every detail. The architecture. The peaceful atmosphere. The slower pace of life. It was exactly the type of place I had hoped to experience at least once. After crossing another destination off my bucket list, our Father's Day adventure continued. Our next stop was one of my favorite restaurants near Pawleys Island. We chose to dine outdoors alongside a beautiful pond accented by a fountain. The setting was peaceful and relaxing. The sound of the water mixed with the conversation and laughter around the table, creating one of those moments you wish you could slow down and hold on to a little longer. For a man who had grown accustomed to quiet Father's Days, simply sharing a meal with people who genuinely wanted me, there was already a gift. But the day wasn't finished. Originally, my young neighbors had planned a round of golf with me. Unfortunately, due to a medical condition, I had to decline that portion of the outing. Rather than allowing that to spoil the day, they quickly adjusted the plans and took me instead to a miniature golf course in Myrtle Beach. The laughter and friendly competition made the evening even more enjoyable. It wasn't really about the score. It was about spending time together. It was about being included. It was about creating memories. As the evening drew closer to an end, I thought our adventure was probably finished. Once again, I was wrong. They had one final stop planned. We drove to one of my favorite ice cream shops in Calabash, North Carolina. We arrived only minutes before closing, just in time to enjoy one final treat before ending our Father's Day journey. Somewhere along the way, I was also presented with a Father's Day card, a card you will see pictured in this video. It may seem like a simple gesture, but for me it represented something much larger. It represented appreciation. It represented thoughtfulness. It represented the fact that someone had remembered. As I looked around that day, I couldn't help but realize how unusual the experience felt. Not because of the places we visited. Not because of the meal, the miniature golf, or the ice cream. But because two young adults whom I had first met as children nearly a decade earlier, had chosen to dedicate their Father's Day weekend to making sure an old neighbor felt appreciated. That realization stayed with me long after the day had ended. As grateful as I was for the kindness shown to me this Father's Day, I would be dishonest if I said the day wasn't also bittersweet. You see, I am the father of 3 adult children, 2 daughters and a son. For the past 24 years, ever since my divorce, Father's Day has never been quite the same. Like many divorced fathers, I was granted custody time. On paper it looked fair enough. But over time I learned there is often a tremendous difference between what is written in a custody agreement and what actually happens in real life. Little by little, special moments seemed to disappear. Opportunities became fewer. Visits became shorter. Relationships became more difficult to maintain. Some of the most important days in a parent's life slowly slipped away. My son's birthday fell on the 4th of July. According to the custody arrangement, that day should have been shared and rotated fairly. Yet year after year, the attraction of a beach house, fireworks, friends, and holiday celebrations seemed to outweigh what was written on paper. How does a father compete with that? Christmases often felt much the same. While I waited for my turn, elaborate celebrations, carefully planned events, and mountains of wrapped gifts had already captured the excitement of the season. By the time my parenting time arrived, I often felt as though I was receiving whatever remained. The challenge wasn't simply time. The challenge was influence. Children naturally gravitate toward excitement, activity, and the parent who appears to provide the most rewarding experiences. What children often cannot see are the quiet sacrifices made behind the scenes. The missed opportunities, the waiting, the disappointment, the gradual erosion of a relationship that once seemed unbreakable. As the years passed, I found myself asking questions many alienated parents ask. How does a child slowly become distant from a parent who loves them? How does affection become indifference? How does trust become doubt? The answer, I believe, rarely occurs through one dramatic event. It often happens through countless small moments. A comment here, a suggestion there. A story repeated often enough to become accepted as fact. A secret encouraged. A question left unanswered. A narrative carefully shaped in the absence of the other parent. Children may be told things directly. Or they may simply absorb attitudes and assumptions from the adults around them. Like in my case, sometimes the targeted parent never knows what was said. Never knows what accusations were made. Never knows what fears were planted. Perhaps there were questions about child support. Perhaps stories about abandonment. Perhaps allegations of selfishness, neglect, or mistreatment. The painful truth is that many alienated parents never fully know. The conversations happen in private. The narratives are created behind closed doors. The child hears one version of events while the other parent remains completely unaware that the discussion ever took place. Over time, confusion can become certainty. Doubt can become belief. And silence can become distance. What hurts most is not simply losing time. It is losing the opportunity to answer questions you never knew were being asked. It is being judged for accusations you never knew existed. It is watching relationships fade without understanding why. That is why this Father's Day meant so much to me. Not because it erased the past. Not because it healed every wound. but because it reminded me that kindness still matters. Showing up still matters. Teaching, mentoring, listening, encouraging, and caring still matter. Two young adults who began as the children next door chose to spend their Father's Day celebrating an old neighbor. They reminded me that while some relationships may have been lost, the investment we make in other people's lives is never truly wasted. Sometimes the appreciation comes from places we never expected. Sometimes the seeds we plant grow in fields we never intended to sow. And sometimes, when life surprises us, it reminds us that fatherhood is not measured solely by biology. It is measured by presence, by guidance, by sacrifice, by love, and by continuing to care even when the outcome is uncertain. This Father's Day, I was reminded that while some chapters of my life remain unfinished, they are not the entire story. And for that, I am profoundly grateful. Thank you, Shannon and Patrick. We will resume our episodes normally published again tomorrow, June 23, 2026.